fellow seekers of challenge and triumph, to the SufferSooner podcast. Join us on a journey where ordinary souls embark on extraordinary endeavors. From the relentless grind of gravel to the punishing gauntlet that is triathlon, we've tasted our fair share of suffering. So fellow endurance warriors, let's lace up our shoes, strap on our goggles, and dive headfirst into the challenge, knowing that with every step, stroke, and pedal forward, we grow stronger together. All right. Welcome to episode number 35. We titled this one, When to Hire a Coach. So I think it's, we're heading into the off season or off time or off, I don't
non-race
really think
season.
There's non-race season where you're not having a lot of races, even though like you can go on Zwift and race every hour if you wanted to. So there's no shortage of online races and stuff like that, but the outside races are starting to wrap up. So, this could be a good time for, the people out there to look into, like, when do you hire a coach? What is the criteria? And so I think, Danny was at the group ride this Wednesday, and he was experimenting with a new, training plan from Garmin.
Again,
from longtime listeners, they know I'm a huge Trainer Road fan. I've been basically on Trainer Road for
version 0.1.
0.1. I've been on there for a long time, so I'm like in the grandpa pricing, But but even then, I've noticed this year, and me and Danny have had some conversations about this, that AI coaching, it has some huge benefits for sure. It is, and we'll get into that here in a little bit, but we're finding that it's not progressing, or it's not living up to the expectations that I have for it. I really think there's some huge improvement that could be had in AI coaching, and we've all seen the commercial where the person goes, okay, Google, write me out a marathon training plan, and AI can do that.
Yeah,
and it will do that, and the plan will be pretty okay. And that's the thing. Like, oh, my Google's actually doing it.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Sorry, Travis has to leave the episode. He has to go do some sprints outside. He'll repeat.
It told me to go do some. It told me to put the breakfast bagel down and get outside and go run. But yeah, no, it's I feel, and this is the coach in me talking, is that the plan, if you're writing, if you're a coach and you think the training plan is the thing that you should be doing, it's the training plan is the easiest part.
Right.
That, once you write one training plan for, let's say, a marathon or a half marathon, or, a triathlon or gravel race or something like that, you start to find that, what you do and what has been done before is basically the same. Like, how many times have we've done 5x5 sweet spot efforts? How many times have you done 20-minute threshold efforts? Like, that's not a training plan thing. That's an interval thing. Like, that's on everybody's training plan, though. You start to get into, the third or fourth week out from your event. Guess what you're seeing? The same kind of stuff. So the training plan is not the hard part about coaching. The hard part about coaching is being very specific in what the race is demanding of the athlete, and then what you can do to help develop that athlete's strengths, and then make their weaknesses stronger, so that they can tackle the challenges of the race, so that they can have a better race. And then I find with my athletes too, I'm kind of like their counselor too.
So you talked about being at the group ride on Wednesday and kind of toying around with some different things. And if you followed the last couple episodes, we've talked a lot about sort of the making the adaptations in your approach, and using this time of the season to not just reflect on the year that you just had, but also to really get clear about the goals for next year. And part of me, when I look at, okay, what do I want to accomplish next year? It's not just the events, because the events are just the expression of all the work, right? And I think that when I've looked at this year, I've definitely seen a lot of improvements in areas, and so to your point, like I follow Trainer Road religiously for a couple of years now, and when we did Unbound training, I kind of dabbled with some Garmin things. I didn't really like the way it was working, so I went back to my Trainer Road because that's tried and true, right? It's what we've done for a number of years now, and it's awesome. And for anybody just getting started out, it's a great place to start. And for anybody that's been riding for a lot of years, it's a great place to pick up and resume. And so no knocks against it at all.
Yeah, with Trainer Road, I always and I use the analogy of like if you fit just in this box, let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're just a triathlete,
Yep.
perfect. If you're just a bike rider, perfect.
Yeah.
If you're trying to be some kind of marathoner slash gravel racer,
Yeah.
it's not going to be that great for you.
Right.
If you're switching between disciplines,
Mm-hmm.
it's the AI doesn't. I mean, eventually, probably it'll get a lot better because there'll be some more data for us. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, the AI that Trainer Road uses and the AI that everybody else uses is these huge models of hundreds of thousands of athletes, and
Mm-hmm.
it just takes the data and what they've done, and then it writes like, oh, the 70% of them have done 5-minute sweet spot efforts 4
Mm-hmm.
weeks out from their event. So
Yeah.
that's basically where we're going to start doing. And it just makes these adjustments. And then they go, well, a lot of times people, when they go out and they do anaerobic sprints, they're tired the next
Mm-hmm.
day. So then it just gives you a suggestion to go easier the next
Yeah.
day or
A
have
rest
more
day
recovery.
or dial
So
it
it's
down.
just doing what 70% of, or not 70%, but the bell curve of people, the majority of people it's found that do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can be a person that recovers well on the bike, like me. I can ride almost every single day,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a big deal. And my legs, it's just my legs on the day are, some days they're bad, and we've
Yeah.
seen that, and some days they're good,
Right.
and we've seen that. And
Yeah.
so it's just like, but riding every day is not a big deal for me. But running every day, there's people I know that run every day. I
Yeah.
can't. I
Yeah.
cannot
Not
do
one of
that.
those people.
I am not one of those people.
Yeah.
So like, but AI doesn't know that.
Right.
It doesn't know who I am. It just guesses like my ability compared to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I've noticed with Trainer Road, especially now, because we've had a bit of a lag between events. So the last real, event kind of thing we did was the Colorado trip. And then between that and now we've got Bad Astra coming up next weekend and then Big Sugar. I've noticed that, I felt like I was on sort of the rinse and repeat cycle of workouts, and I got to, and I've actually used this time to kind of um, um, let my body recover quite a bit. I had some natural sort of breaks in there with work stuff. I had to take a trip for business and all that kind of stuff, but use as a chance to get a really good recovery. And I think I made the comment to you, Travis, on one of our rides over the weekend, maybe last weekend or a couple weekends ago. And I'd said, gosh, I know my fitness isn't where it was, or just a month or so ago, but I feel really good. Like, it's that whole fresh legs thing. Your body's almost fully recovered. Even though I've been doing workouts, I've backed the intensity way off. Volume has come way down from where it was, say, 6 months ago. But I feel really good on the bike right now. It's a lot of fun again. And so, Trainer Road, I think this week Trainer Road had me on a recovery week, but I was like, well, I haven't been putting a lot of volume in, and I really don't want to take a recovery week this week and then do again, Trainer Road says like a taper week next week for Bad Astra. Like, I really didn't feel like doing that. I felt like that was not a good move for me for where I'm at in the season. And so I looked at, Garmin does all those daily suggested workouts. If you put your event into the schedule, it'll do like a daily suggested workout. And it just happened to be on Wednesday. It said, do some sprint efforts. I'm like, ooh, I haven't done sprints in forever. I can't remember the last time I did a structured sprint workout. And then it got me down the rabbit hole, right? I'm like, well,
Yeah.
gosh, why doesn't Trainer Road ever give me a sprint workout? It has the workouts in there.
Yeah.
And I remember I've toyed around with it. We can have it do a whole episode on Trainer Road, but I've toyed around, like, there are certain things in the plans and the algorithms and the AI models that it uses. Trainer Road for longer, if you put in there that you're doing a longer course event, Trainer Road will not give you much in the way of anaerobic workouts, even though there's a whole library full of them. So anyway, I thought, you know what, let's just use the group ride. And I told the folks at the group ride, like, hey, I'm going to be doing a sprint workout today, but there's like 2 minutes in between each sprint. So you're going to see me burst, and then I'll back, and then you'll catch me, and you'll probably pass me, and we'll leapfrog each other. They were all good with it.
Well,
And
I
so,
mean, let's think about the AI part too. Like
yeah.
when you tell it you're going to do a longer event, what do you think the majority of the people
Oh yeah, they're all
that are
doing long,
that
like
are
long
doing the
sustained efforts.
well,
Yeah.
no, but I mean, but what are they? What is their goal? You think? Is it just to finish?
Usually.
Right,
Usually.
exactly, right?
Yeah.
So there's no anaerobic efforts in there because
Yeah. You're not
if you
race
need to,
tactics in
they're
that.
not
Yeah.
race tactics in there. You don't
Yeah.
have to respond to a race because your race is just to finish.
Right.
And that's different.
It's
And that's
totally
okay,
different.
which
Yeah,
is
nothing
fine.
wrong with that. Yeah.
But that's where AI doesn't know you as an athlete.
That's right.
And that's where a coach will know. Like,
That's right.
what's the first thing I ever asked you, when I coached you for, like when
The
we
very
coached
beginning.
for stuff
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
very beginning, it's basically like, what is your goal for the race that you're training for? Is it just to finish?
And
Is it
Trainer Road
just
doesn't have that.
right?
I mean, it doesn't ask
Exactly.
those questions.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think that's probably going to be the next thing that they're going to develop because,
so.
I listen to the Trainer Road podcast too.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm on like, I read through the forums and stuff. So like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Kinda
I'm
nerd out
really,
on it.
I
Yeah.
really love Trainer Road.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can love something and then
Still
see that
have challenges
there's
with
flaws
it.
in it too,
Yeah.
so it's not a big deal, but
That's healthy though. I mean, yeah.
but that's, you don't want to look at everything with rose-colored glasses. You want to be objective and just be like,
Right.
look, this is its limitations. It's a great tool, but
Yep.
just like, I'm not going to use a hammer to paint my house.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Like you have to use the right tool for the job.
Yeah, and again, it has its limitations, and Trainer Road's not the only platform with AI, by the way. I mean, I think to some extent, Garmin would probably say they're using AI in the background because they, in some of the latest software on their watches and computers, the plans, if you use the Garmin Coach, they call it, the plans will adapt based on like your stress levels for the day. For example, like it might have you do a threshold workout, and then if you had a stressful day of work or you know did a lot of moving around and you didn't, it may adapt your plan down and say, well, you're, instead of doing that threshold work, you're going to do a base workout, or you're just not going to do a workout at all. And it's like, wow, Garmin, I mean, I had a busy day at work, but I kind of feel like blowing some stress off. I really would have liked to have had that threshold workout.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I think again, AI has its uses, and I think it's really good at suggesting things. What I don't think it's good at is making decisions yet. And so I think that, as much as possible, I wish these programs, and Trainer Road does this, by the way, and some of the others don't, is they ask you, do you want to accept these adaptations or do you want to skip them? And 99% of the time, I'll review it and make that decision. Many times I skip it, but, most of the time I try to accept it if I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So I think that, this whole notion that the AI plans is the way to go and everything. It's getting better. It certainly is. I still think that it to your point earlier, it's really meant for the masses. I think it's meant for the people that just want to push button plan and they don't want to think about it, and they don't really have an objective in their training necessarily. Again, not that you can't have an objective and attain it. It's just a lot of the people out there, like you said, are just in it. I just want to finish the 100-mile race. I just want to be able to do my 40K TT, and that's okay. There's nothing at all wrong, and you will get improvement. And we'll talk about this in a minute about getting the most out of your training, and we'll talk about like what I noticed after doing those sprint efforts. But you will see improvement, and that's why Trainer Road and many of these other things are so good. But when you break it all down, when you kind of alluded to this earlier, Travis, I talked to you before the show, before we started recording. I was telling you I cracked open the old Cyclist Training Bible, the Joe Friel book, and you look at the suggested plan. How old is that book, by the way? Is that 20 years old now? I think it's 20 years. It's in the 90s,
it's
right?
One of the first ones I read. They basically only had like they had this old Cyclops wheel hub power.
That's right. That's right. The pictures in are great.
None of the youngsters will
like
even
a time
know what
machine.
that is. Yeah.
That's right. So you look in it and it has like it talks in there about how to build your training plan and some of the things that were working at that point in time. And guess what? The model for building plans then is exactly the same as the model for building plans now. You have a hard day, you follow that with a easier day, then you have a medium day of like a threshold or sweet spot, then you have another easy day. Then you get to the weekend and you've got a long ride and you got a hard day on the weekend and then a rest day built in. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's all using the same formula. And like you said earlier, you've already done the 5x5s dozens of times. You've done the 220-minute threshold dozens of times. And so really when you look at these AI models, all they're really doing is they're picking from that library of standard workouts and they're just applying the one that makes sense based on your recent training and the math associated with it and the model that's comparing you to the hundreds of thousands of other people. Not that there's no benefit to that. There certainly is. But that model doesn't know you, Travis, individually. It doesn't know that your goal is to, hey, I want to be, you know what, the last race, I couldn't cover the attack off the front and I don't have that top end. It doesn't know that. And it doesn't know that you want to build your top end to support that objective. And so you're never
It
going to
doesn't know
train
that
that.
you want to try to win, your local turkey trot.
That's right.
Like
Yeah,
it doesn't know
exactly
it
right.
doesn't know any of this stuff.
That's
It
exactly
just
it.
it goes off the fact like here's some general fitness that will at least get you to probably be in the, let's say top third,
Yeah.
compared to everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's AI. And
So,
like
yeah,
you said, like the training plan, there's no,
there's
a
no
lot of people,
secrets.
not a lot of people think that if I do like a kitchen sink workout where I do 10 sprints in the beginning and I run it and I go at, threshold for another 10 minutes, and that you just have all this, the more complicated the workout looks, the more that they're going to like get some benefit of it. And I'm
Right.
like, that may look fun. It may
Yeah.
look like
Yeah.
stuff, but the tried and true methods, and AI is basically flushing this out, because I've done, I don't know, like 3 years at least of Trainer Road AI coaching. I was the first,
Yeah.
one of
When
the
they
first
first offered
when
it.
they
Yeah.
had beta and
Beta
stuff.
of it.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so but I've seen the same workouts. I've been
Mhm.
given the same workouts, and I've improved every year. And every year I've gotten faster and I've gotten better, and it's worked.
Yeah.
But the key thing here, and it's not the workouts
Yeah.
that makes the AI training good. It's the consistency that it develops, and
Right.
that's I think the part that you, as a coach, you look at. Like I do this too. Like I hear from my athletes, like,
Mhm.
oh, this workout was too easy. I'm like, okay, so instead of doing a 10% jump or 5%, what I was planning on doing for the next week, I'm like, well, let's bump that up to maybe 10, 15%
Sure.
in that interval, so that we make the
Or
appropriately hard.
or you could structure the interval differently where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you think that
So
3
maybe
minute
you
VO
could,
that
yeah,
3 minute VO2 max was easy, then next week we're going to go to 4 or
yeah,
5,
we're gonna go a
Let's
little
find out
bit,
what easy is.
yeah, or we're gonna be like,
Yeah.
well, instead of having 3 minutes of recovery, let's see
Yeah.
how you do with 2 minutes of
Yeah.
recovery
Yeah.
before you're back at it again.
Yeah.
So you can, and you look at how they respond to stuff, and then you go, okay, so they're responding to this type of effort in this way, and so
Mhm.
I'm going to make it harder, so that it's an appropriately hard effort for them on this thing.
So another thing on that AI stuff, because you bring up a really interesting point. Like a coach will look at that and can make some of those determinations. And don't get me wrong, there's computers can do math far better than humans can. So I believe that the models will generally point you in the right direction. But what's really interesting is part of the AI training is it will do AI detection of your FTP, which I think is hit and miss. I think it's a good tool. Don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. And here's what's interesting is I mentioned I'd taken the last 4 weeks or so have been much lower volume, much lower intensity. Maybe sprinkle in a little bit of inconsistency in a couple of those weeks with business travel and everything, but for the most part, I've just mostly been just lower volume, lower intensity. So I just for the fun of it, I was like, well, I wonder what it detects what my FTP is right now, because I've got to think it dropped. Like, because I can tell you right now, if I tried to go out and run a full hour or do a 20-minute FTP test, I think I know where my number would be, and it would not be as high as it was 4 weeks ago. But AI FTP determined that my FTP actually went up a point in the last 4 weeks. And I was like, well, that's interesting because I sure don't feel like it's gone up a point. And I think that's also proven with like just where my heart rate is and where my perceived effort is and where my actual power numbers are at for the last several rides when I've put out a consistent, 5 to 10 minute effort. Or even when I just did my 20-minute sweet spots a couple of weeks ago, like I know where my heart rate was, and it was telling me I was a little closer to threshold than I probably should have been if I was going to be as high as it says I am for an FTP. So I just think I think there's a lot of good that's coming with it. It's got a long way to go. I don't think it'll ever replace a coach. We said that before. I just don't see how it's possible. Um, Even if it gets really good at decision making and the math gets better and the algorithms get sharper, I just don't know that there's always that human element to things that I'm just not sure AI can fully replicate. Even if you go to like the extreme end of its capabilities and where it may go in the future. But yeah, so I think it starts to invite sort of that natural question is like, so if you've got these different programs and applications that people have access to, then why would you hire a coach and when would you hire a coach? And so
yeah, so I'm wrestling with this right now, and so my journey is right. I have a goal in mind for 2025, and it involves me running faster.
Yeah.
And granted, I am a decent runner by the
standards,
bell curve
yeah.
of standards. I'm a 9 minute per mile runner.
And in the triathlon world, that's above average.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but I look at my cycling, which is top, I would say I'm easily in the top 20% of a bike race, if not the top 15.
Yeah.
So going in my age group, not overall, like in some races, in the local races, yes, I'm in like the closer to the 10%, but like if you're looking at like an Unbound or something like that, where you pull in athletes from all over the world, that's more of like a national level thing. I shoot for top 30% because like everybody who's good shows up there because they want to be tested at their fitness for
that's right.
But then I look at my run, and my run is the low hanging fruit on my triathlon is the run. If I can improve the run by a minute, it saves me 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Over an Ironman course.
And if I can jump how many spots? Tons of spots.
Tons of spots.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is like my run on the marathon, I'm barely 50%. Barely.
Yeah.
And then, you look at like a half marathon or a 10K or something like that. So, how long have we been training for a marathon, Mesa Marathon? 4 years almost.
Yeah.
My run has not improved.
Right.
So I've done some drastic changes to my strength training. I've been pretty diligent with that, except for last week when I hurt
your back was hurting.
It's really hard to do a squat with weight on your back when your back doesn't work.
Yeah, so just got to know when to hang it up sometimes.
Sometimes you just got to know when to just call it that week's a dedicated rest week.
Beaten by the truck again.
Yep. So I've been doing that. I've been incorporating a lot of jump rope and explosive types, some plyometrics and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to a run coach. She's we're gonna have her on next week.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to end up using her in after we get done with Big Sugar to evaluate my form. Kind of bounce some ideas off of her and see what I can do to help improve my run.
Yeah.
And it can't just be run more, because I can't run more. I physically cannot run more.
Well, it may eventually become run more,
yes,
but there's things that you have to do to get to being able to run more. Because to your point, your body, and we've talked about this so much. I think I know as much about your running as you do, because and it may have a few other things because I actually see you run. You don't get to see yourself run, and we talked about it. It's like I mean, you don't recover well after a run, and I think you're going to probably find there's some form things, but there are definitely some things you could probably be doing that will quickly get you to where hey, if you can just run that extra 5 to 10 miles a week and with good recovery, then that might be the volume bump that starts to bring that time down a little bit. And then, of course, you know how it works. The faster per mile, the more miles, it's easier to get. Like,
Yep.
you know, we always talk about this. Like if you're trying to run 40 miles a week, but you run a, 10-minute mile pace and you can't recover very well when you run a 9-minute mile pace, well, you're going to be running a lot of hours to make that work out,
Yeah.
and it just gets to a point where it's not sustainable. So
yeah. And so to get to the point when you hire a coach, well, the thing is I've seen in my training is that I've plateaued. Right?
Yeah. The
whatever
engine's there. The engine is
engine's
developed.
there.
Yeah.
I can,
Yeah.
like on a bike, swimming, I can take a week off of swimming, jump back in, do almost 4K.
You did 4K
I did
last
4K
night,
last
didn't you?
night.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
it's like, and we were doing hard
Yeah.
sets. And
Yeah.
so and I'm working on doing different strokes, and I'm learning different strokes, and I'm getting faster, and I'm seeing improvement in my
Mhm.
swim.
Mhm.
And even, the people I swim with are, seeing improvement.
Yeah.
So they're, you don't really need a coach if you're seeing improvement,
Right.
right? Like, because whatever you're doing, the consistency that you're doing that stuff at, and you're seeing progress,
Mhm.
you may see more progress if you have a coach, because they can kind of look at what you're doing and saying, okay, he's really responding to this type of stimulus. So we're
Mhm.
going to just kind of overload and see how far we can get this to go up.
Right.
But if you get to a plateau and you're kind of stuck, and you're just like you're like me, like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I don't know what else to do to become a faster runner.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've tried running,
Yeah.
30 miles a week, and I just cannot recover from it.
Yeah.
It's very,
You just feel beaten down more. And
It is.
and we've done this too when we did our marathon training either last year or 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2 years ago. We had a couple of those, with the appropriate rest, we had a couple of those 30-mile week blocks. And for those of you that are actual runners, like 30 miles a week doesn't sound like much. And it's not. In the grand scheme of things, it's not enough. Like, it's not enough volume for those peak training weeks in marathon training. You should be closer to 40, almost 50 miles if you're really going for the goals that you and I talk about. And you're right, like at the end of those 30-mile weeks, you and I both were just totally shot. Like, there was just like, you need
And
a full week to recover.
I'm laying on the couch every minute I can.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's like, and here's the
Yeah.
thing, like, I can put in, 20K weeks in the pool, not a big deal.
Right.
I can recover. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm more hungry and I eat more.
Yeah.
Or we do 300 miles on the bike.
Yeah.
Like, tell a runner that you're going to do 300 miles on the bike. You're going to ride every day for about
Mhm.
90 minutes. And then on the
Mhm.
weekend, you're going to do 2 back-to-back 6-hour rides. They're like,
Yeah.
what? No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, so the engine is there, but obviously there's some gaping
Mechanical
form issue that I'm just not, that I need to be taught, or I need to focus on, or there's a weakness in my,
Mhm.
posterior chain or something like that needs to be addressed. And then the engine can actually, make this old Studebaker run.
Yeah. So let's kind of move into like what the coach can be doing for you, because I think that what you're talking about is spot on. Like, those are all things that, again, we go back to the AI training. AI training is not in a state that it's going to be able to help you with those things. And
yeah, I don't think there's an AI run coach yet.
I don't know that there's a run. There are applications out there. I know there are on the bike. I'm almost certain there are for the run as well, where you can record yourself in the exercise in, like, in a controlled environment, like on a trainer or on a treadmill, and
which I've done.
Yeah,
and
right.
and I've measured the angles, and
It does all that
like,
stuff, right?
And I have this thing called the Leomo. It's a device that measures, accelerometers,
Mhm.
triaxial.
You guys, all the data you ever
Yeah,
wanted.
all the data you want,
Yeah.
and it splices it up into kind of like what you're doing.
Mhm.
Well, guess what? I'm elite in a lot of stuff.
Right. Well, now I also know,
except for like two efforts where, like, I just don't pick my heels up high enough or something like that, and I'm just like, that cannot be the reason I'm slow.
Right. And that's the thing. Again, it's like, it comes back to data overload and all the marketing around this stuff. And don't get me wrong, those types of things help certain people at certain times. And again, it's a tool in the toolbox, but it is not the thing that's gonna point you to the breakthrough. And in fact, there may not be a total breakthrough. It may be multiple smaller things that you're going to have to work on. And I think that kind of gets back to why having a person that can actually evaluate what you're doing, they understand what your goals are. They understand, where you see some of your problems, and then they watch you, and then they can see with their experience what your problems are also, and then they can start to develop a plan to help solve for those problems, because AI is not going to be able to do that, and not anytime soon. And so I think, we kind of get back to, what should your coach be doing for you? I mean, at the most fundamental level, they're going to be helping. Yes, they're going to help build your plans. Yes, they're going to help you, think about the things you need to do to accomplish your goals. They're going to be that reality check for you. But I think, to your point, like, as you get deeper into the, hey, I have a specific goal and I need to improve here, they're going to be that objective eye that you can't be for yourself. No matter how many times you record yourself and everything else, you can't always see these things. And how many times have you watched your stride and you're like, yeah, I know I drag my heels from time to time, but what are you going to do to fix it? Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So I think that's where, having that person, and I think it's really interesting. I can't wait to talk to our guest next week, because I think hearing from that viewpoint too, like, how many people come to you as a coach, and this from the biking side, the cycling side, how many people come to you with, hey, this was my goal, and this is what I want to do, and then you realize, like, don't want to burst your bubble here, but your approach has not been sound. Like, this is not the way you approach solving what you want to get to.
Yeah.
And it's like, my approach is totally wrong, right? So,
well, I mean, how many times have you seen athletes that go like, oh, well, I want to do, I want to do this Ironman bike at 25 miles an hour average. I'm like,
yeah.
do you know how
cool.
hard that is?
Right.
Like,
yeah, because let me tell you, I know how hard it is to ride 23 miles an hour.
Yeah, I'm like, I can do 20, but I'm like, you're talking multiple hours at 25 miles an hour. I'm like, you better be like, but this is the where AI training doesn't work, because AI doesn't know how aero you are.
Right.
AI doesn't know, that, what's your, how close is your lactate threshold to your, ventilatory, like all this other stuff that's like really close. Like, it's like that athlete may be able to ride 25 miles an hour, but if they're wearing like a vented, POC helmet that's just not aero, and they're riding on gator skins and, the least rolling resistant tire, like, that's what a coach does. A coach knows all of this stuff. What aero helmet is going to be the best for your position? What tire selection is going to be the best for you? Can we get a different bar setup that will allow you to be more comfortable, more aero? Like, are you wearing a skin suit, or are you just wearing a t-shirt?
Right.
Like, are you wearing calf sleeves? Are you wearing, and I talked to Serena, and she's like, I want to get the most out of my bike on this ride. And I was like, well, have you thought about latex tubes? Have you thought about tubeless? Have you thought about calf sleeves? Have you thought about a aero suit to like one piece tri-suit? Have you thought about, what helmet are you going to use? She's like, well, I haven't really thought about all this. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that you need to think about, because if you want to go faster, it's not just push more wattage. Yes, I wish it was, but eventually you get to a point where you can't gain any more wattage. You're
at least not in the timeline that you want to accomplish your goal. Right.
Yeah. And so you can do other stuff to get you faster.
Right.
And that's what a coach does. AI doesn't do that kind of stuff. So that's what your coach should be doing for you. Should be looking at your position, should be looking at, what you're hiring them for. They shouldn't, the plan is just there. Right. Yeah. And so the plan should be something that's developed to address your certain weaknesses. So, if I go to a run coach and all they tell me is like, well, you just need to run like 4 or 5 times a week. And I'm like, I've done that.
That's what I do.
And I have not, and I've done that. And here's the data. You can't just tell me to run more and think that it's going to make me fast. It will make me a little bit faster for sure. Just because the fact that you're doing something over and over and over, you're just going to get more and more better at it.
Well, and I think too,
I can't drop swimming and I can't drop biking just to go and run more.
Well, and it's to your point though. I mean, you have tried running more, and I know at least last year, I don't know about this year as much, but I know last year you were doing religiously every week like speed workouts at the track, and I know this because the next day we would go ride and you would be crippled from it, but so I'd attack you, but
no,
I think,
it's fine.
but no, I know you would do speed workouts, so it's not like you haven't done the work. And look, nobody here is expecting to push a button and automatically you're a minute faster in a month. Like, that's not how, we all know that's not how it works. But the incremental progress that you expect to see in your pace wasn't showing up even though you were doing that hard work, like, yeah, your engine was tuned up a little bit more, and yeah, you could probably hold a harder effort a little longer, but you weren't. But there was clearly not the type of gain you would expect to see after putting that kind of work in. Like
Yeah.
you weren't going from a 9:30 to an 8:45, and like I know that's a big jump for per mile pace. Definitely not in a marathon, but even in your 5K, you weren't seeing the type of improvement that you would have expected. So
Well, I mean, and to compound the fact that like I would do those workouts, we would do those, sprint Tuesdays or sprint Thursdays or
mhm,
whatever. It was 400-meter repeats, and we would
mhm.
just add one every
Yeah,
week or
it's a
whatever.
typical training plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but here's the deal: on the weekend when I did my long run, guess who I was next to all the time? Danny wasn't doing any of the speed workout. He was
No.
just
Yeah.
doing what he normally does.
Yeah.
And I run right next to me and Danny almost run the exact
Same
same
times.
easy
Yeah.
pace.
Yeah.
His heart rate's of course like 10 beats higher than mine,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
his
That's just
normal,
normal. Yeah.
his pace. And it was like, yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
getting, I should have seen that I was getting at least a little bit faster,
Mhm.
if not, especially for the heart rate and all that stuff, but
Right.
just was not happening.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, but that's what the coach does. The coach,
Mhm.
having a coach and hiring a coach, you basically pay for what you get. If you just want to
Yeah.
plan,
Yeah.
it's super cheap. You can
Sure.
either get one and execute it, and then talk to your coach, and they'll put it in there or whatever. If you want something that's more involved, where they're like looking at you and evaluating you and giving you stuff, and then giving and developing your plan to basically like, okay, this is your cadence is too low on the run. We need to get
Mhm.
that up. So here in the next 4 weeks, you're building the cadence of your runs up
Yeah.
into or maybe it takes 8 weeks, like, depending on how big the gap is, we're going to start building it. And the thing is, as an athlete, you should always think, I will probably go slower
Mhm.
at first to go faster in the end.
Yeah.
And because you're learning a new skill,
Yep.
and you're trying to change something that's been ingrained in you for years and years and years. God, I don't know how long I've been doing this, but way too long. And so it's,
You think you'd learn by now.
for any coach to just come in here and just, so we're going to fix this, and this, it's probably too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
The one thing that a coach does is go, okay, if we fix this one thing or two things,
Mhm.
it'll probably have a knock-on effect for all the other things.
Right.
So that we won't have to worry about, how your legs traveling through, or,
Mhm.
or, all this other stuff. I mean, how many times have we, if cyclists just stop coasting on the downhill,
I know.
you'd
Yeah.
be so much faster.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if they could just understand that one thing,
Yeah.
like they'll just be faster.
Yeah, you may find out that's like, hey, yes, you think you're at a, maybe a threshold limit, but based on your data and your running, like maybe you're not. Maybe you just need to figure out what comfort really is in
Yeah,
running.
maybe my
Yeah.
pain tolerance needs to be
Yeah.
changed.
Who knows? Like, I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch and see you kind of go through this, because it's gonna be good and bad. Because I mean, the good will be you're going to hopefully come out of this, faster and hitting the goals you want. The bad will be you're going to be faster and I won't be able to catch you. And so you're like, well, there goes that one. So
There
yeah,
goes that one.
yeah. But
Remember that time I beat you at Mesa Marathon?
yeah, right. I know, right? Yeah, that's right. I did do that. I actually, I
Yeah,
forgot. I
you
totally
did.
forgot that
You
I did
did.
beat you. That's right. Yeah. See, I don't think about that stuff because
I
it's
know.
just not how we are. But it's funny.
Yeah, I
It's
get
funny.
to the race and I'm like, okay, that's done.
Yeah,
And
I
then I
know.
move
I
on
know.
to the next thing.
But it's no. It's actually kind of funny. Like we were talking of like you put a lot of work in last year in the run in the summertime, and it's not like you sat on the couch. I mean, but yeah, the speed just never translated to a faster time in the race. And yeah, so it's kind of funny that I didn't do any of that, and I'd be
Yeah.
sorry, man.
Sorry, man. No, it's fine. I mean, that's the thing too. Like you try these
Yeah,
things, and that's the other thing too with coaching. They're gonna try some stuff. It may
yeah,
not work,
may not work.
but
Yeah,
the thing is like it's a data point. Now
there's no yeah,
that doesn't work,
and that's
and
the other
so you need to move
misconception.
on.
Yeah, there's no book of guaranteed results. Like there's no way to like that's part of it too. I mean, that's why you've got to have a lot of trust in the person you select as your coach too, because and why you should not just assume AI is going to automatically work for you. It's like it takes a lot of trust, and you know what, recognize that something may not work, but the faster you can recognize that and make the adjustment, then, get back on a path is something that will. So, I think too, we'll kind of get into some of the getting the most out of your training, because I think that ties in with your coach is going to help you maximize, your training sessions, and even just for yourself, whether you're coached or not. Yeah, I mentioned I decided to turn Wednesday into a sprint interval day. And it worked out because I actually put out a max overall power. Again, keep in mind, for the last 4 to 5 weeks, I haven't been doing consistent hard efforts or anything like that. So I'm about as recovered as I could be. And so I ended up putting out like max overall power. I set a record on that, and I set a record on max 5 and 10-second power, which
is huge.
Which is huge. Because I haven't been working on it. Back to the point, like Trainer Road hasn't had me doing any of these types of things. So on one hand, I say I'm frustrated with Trainer Road, but then on the other hand, it's like I've got best results I've ever gotten in these two categories, and that's what the sprints were 10-second sprints. So I suspect if I had done a 20-second or 30-second sprint, I probably would have seen an improvement there too. And so, while I say, oh my gosh, I'm frustrated with Trainer Road, I'm not sure it's getting me the results. On the flip side, I've got the best results I've ever gotten in these two categories. And so then I start to go, but am I getting the most out of it? Like, yes, I've improved, but am I really getting the most? Because what would happen if I was actually training these energy systems? And what would happen if I worked some of these types of things into my training regimen? And we were talking before the show, like, I think the way that the plans are structured with the way that we use Trainer Road, and I think the way a lot of people approach these races is you work a lot of your base, your sweet spot, and then your VO2 max. Sometimes you get threshold in there too. And so I feel like what's happened, at least for me, is like my fitness has sort of been boxed into this little range, like right here, and it's like, so I'm always in this little box, but what you got to do something eventually to make that box bigger and give yourself more room to work in these higher ranges. So hopefully you can kind of shift everything up, and at least that's the theory I have. And I'm not a scientist. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels like
what happens is just like you were talking, you have your upper limit here. And then as your threshold, VO2 max, and all that other stuff gets really, really close and really, really tight. So if you don't ever work this to raise this up,
right.
I mean, it will eventually just kind of rise up and
on
down,
its own,
but it will just kind of squish itself in there.
And which is, go ahead.
And the other part too, that, if you weren't painted, if you weren't, kind of frustrated and you're just kind of rolling through this, AI, Trainer Road plan, you would have never found that, like, your sprint was actually, I mean, looking at your numbers, I saw and I was like, dang, those are some good numbers. That's some really good stuff. That now, like I would be like, this is something that we should develop, you to have in a race, because unlike
break some souls out there.
Exactly. So like I was, we were talking in the beginning, like this could be Danny's attack move where he puts on a good, 10-second sprint, gets a really good, a decent, like 15-second gap on the group that he's in. And then they have to work. And if they don't have a diesel like me in that group, they're going to have to burn some matches to get back. So I don't have Danny's sprint is, he sprints better than I do. And, but I can hold like those higher wattages
for a little longer,
a little bit longer. So my max sprint power is not as high as Danny.
Sure.
And it just never has been. I'm a huge diesel engine, but I can hold.
But you could reel me back in if I ever.
So if you look at a race situation, Danny can sprint away from the field. What I do to the field is I just slowly ramp up the power, and I get on the front and I just start amping it up. And the next thing I know, there's only Danny behind me because he's fought for that wheel so hard.
I am really good at fighting for Travis's wheel, by the way. Yeah.
And so developing this kind of stuff is, in a race situation, this is what you get the most out of your training, because now you're getting very specific tools to use in a race. So know that, like, this section here on this course, they have like a little small, like little ramp or whatever, like a little small hill, right? Yeah.
Well, maybe like a 6% grade or something.
6%
like
grade.
Quarter mile.
And from riding with me that anything over 4%, I'm going to attack you into that hill, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to attack into that hill. You already know that because you've ridden
Mm-hmm.
with me so much.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the field doesn't know that. So they're going to go hard. And
Mm-hmm.
then if I'm not, if I'm not racing, or if we're all racing, then Danny hits that 6%. He drops his sprint to get
Yeah.
up and over the hill. Now
Mm-hmm.
he's 20 seconds ahead. And
Right.
basically, I'm not going to chase Danny
That's right.
down.
You work it
And
back. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And so you have these, we're two different riders,
Mm-hmm.
but we have two different skill sets. And so, that's when you're racing, AI doesn't do that, but your
Yeah.
coach can see that kind of stuff and say, okay, here's where your skill set is going to come into play. So here's
Right.
where you should definitely make your attack. If you're in a position to make an attack, do it.
Right.
If you want to, try to, win the race or podium, or, place top 15, whatever,
Yeah.
like that's where, you use the coach, and then the training plan that the coach develops to get the most out of your training, because you're training
Mm-hmm.
your specific strength, and then you're also working on some weaknesses, right?
Yeah.
So like, with Danny, he doesn't really like to ride off the front. He always likes to be sheltered.
I do.
And
I admit that.
so like, one of his weaknesses is definitely like not like riding on the front and holding like he either holds too high of a power, or he
Yeah.
just kind of drifts back through.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
that would be something that we would work on it.
Keep working on it. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a coach, because the thing with, and the reason I would explain it to him, and AI is not going to tell you the reason why, is Danny, the reason you want to be a good guy on the front is so that you can create that group cohesion, so
Mm-hmm.
that you can get these guys to work together to help
Yeah.
pull you to the end, so that
You
you
beat
can
him on a
sprint
sprint.
them, so that
Yeah.
you can beat them for a sprint, because
Yeah.
they don't know that you can sprint.
Right.
So then it's
Yeah.
just like you're working out, you're getting the most out of your training, so that you can develop these skills in your toolbox, so that when you go to a race, it's not about, I mean, how many times is, we hear, I just want to finish. Well,
Right.
for us, it's, we know we're going to finish.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've done this enough that, barring some mechanical or barring some kind of issue, we're going to finish.
I think too, though, even if your goal is just to finish, I think whether you're willing to admit it or not, everybody still wants to have a time. They still have a time in their head. They still want to go faster,
Yep.
whatever that means to them. However that whatever ranking that is in the final sheets or whatever, it doesn't really matter. The point is that most people out there want to go faster, and whether it be because they want to see improvement, or they just want to get it done faster, suffer sooner. And so I think even if you're in a triathlon situation, these tactics, even though you're racing against the clock, not against the other people on the course. But when you see these profiles where you might get like a 4 or 5% grade even on an Ironman course, you might get a 4 or 5% grade for a quarter mile. If you're trained and you're able to push a strong VO2 max effort over that hill, you're going to pick up 20, 30 seconds on the pack easily. And so, yeah, you're racing the clock, but you're also racing yourself. You're going to get fat. You're going to be faster over that hill, and you're going to find yourself crawling up the list pretty fast. And I just think people too often think, oh, if all I got to do is just hold a constant power to get through the course. It's like, no. You're part of racing the clock is racing against the course profile too, and having the tools in the toolbox to do it. Yeah, you're never going to do a sprint finish in a triathlon. So probably not worth training the anaerobic side for sprint purposes, but it might be worth training some of your anaerobic, especially in the off season, or, not in the off season, but in the weeks leading up, so that you can try to bring that up a little bit. So if you do have to go into anaerobic to get over a hump somewhere, you're not zapping yourself, and you can hold that higher power. And I was just talking with one of the folks on the group ride on Wednesday over the last 2 weeks about the importance of consistent pedaling. And we talk about like pedal downhill, like don't stop pedaling until you're spinning out of that fastest gear. Like until you're doing that, you better not stop pedaling. And they finally did it on Wednesday, and like, oh, lo and behold, they were 2 miles an hour faster, and the perceived effort was lower. I'm like, yeah, because you're being efficient now, and it's all about the efficiency side.
Yep.
And so again, back to getting the most out of your training, it's like, even if your goal is even if you don't think your goal is to podium or to be faster and all that other stuff, it's important because when you can anytime you can lower the perceived effort to get something done, it's going to have, especially in triathlon world. I mean, if you can lower your perceived effort on the bike and be 3 miles an hour faster, and then go hit the marathon with some of the run training you're talking about from the last segment, all of a sudden, next thing you know, like, yeah, maybe my goal wasn't to be faster, but man, that sure was a lot of fun because I was able to express the fitness and show all the improvements that I've been making. And so you just get the accomplishment, if nothing else, of
Right.
all that work. Yeah.
And the goal, and I'm a huge proponent of not having time goals. Like
Yeah.
As a coach, I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all course dependent. But the truth and the reality of it is, if you want to, like, let's say you want to qualify for Boston, right? Well, that's a time. You have to run it, and you have to run a marathon in a certain amount of time.
That's right.
So you get to the point where time becomes kind of the only goal, right? Especially if you want to qualify for one of these things.
It's a time trial, effectively.
Yeah, basically, or, like, oh, I want to, qualify for, Ironman World Championships, or something like that. Somebody wants to do that. And it's like, okay, well, you need to swim at this speed. You probably need to bike at this speed, and you need to run a marathon at roughly this speed. And so if you can't do that stuff, then we have to work on something.
Yeah.
And so that's what it is. And then it's, then you're racing the people on the course, right? Because like a Ironman World Championship type thing, you're racing your fellow age groups. There's only a couple roll down spots. So you have to, you may have a sprint finish at the end, and it may not look like a sprint finish, but it'll feel like a sprint finish.
Yeah.
So, eventually it's kind of funny. Like, I always make this comparison of like, new athletes are always worried about time and speed. And then you get to the intermediate athletes, and they're just kind of worried about, like, effective training and all this stuff. And then you get to professional athletes, and they're always worried about time and speed.
Yeah.
It's like they go through this, like,
the cycle,
cycle of things. And it's just like, don't, you want to care about, what's appropriate for your race. Right. So, like, and that's how you get the most out of your training. So, like, I always tell my athletes too, is like, when we're doing an effort, like, if you don't understand why we're doing this workout, I'm like, that you need to call me.
Yeah.
Like, if I haven't made that clear enough, like, and told you exactly, like, why we're doing this, then
every workout has a goal.
Yeah. Do not do that workout. Call me and we'll talk about it. And we'll discuss why it's important. And if you don't, like, and for most of my athletes, they're really appreciative of this, because I'm explaining this stuff to you so that you can be more informed to explain to me what you want, like, how you want this to work out, like how you want your training plan to look. Because, Danny's training plan for, let's say, Unbound, if he decides to do like Unbound XL or Unbound 200 or whatever, I would say, like, yeah, he should probably have some anaerobic sprints in there just in case he needs to drop some power to catch onto the group.
Right.
Like that's a good thing to have, especially if he gets into a situation where the terrain is a little technical. Then he can have the peace of mind knowing that he can slow down, navigate the terrain, not have a mechanical, and then he can get himself back to the group.
Yep.
That's huge. Just to tell him as an athlete, like, hey, it's okay in this section, when you get to these roads that are not maintained, like, go ahead and let the group go. You have enough power in the bank to get back to these guys. So don't worry about losing them. Don't follow all their lines. Just, keep yourself safe and then going. That's a huge relief for an athlete.
Oh yeah.
To know that like, they're like, oh, I don't have to stay on those guys. Like, I don't have to ride 20 miles an hour and be scared the whole time and freaked out. Like, no, man, you have this arrow in your quiver that you can just, you can use, and you can get back to this group and continue to race, and achieve your goal. So, that's how you get, like, the most out of your training, is basically knowing yourself and knowing what you're capable of, so that in a race situation, you can express that, and just, you have that little toolbox of, like, all right, this is what I can do. This is how I'm going to get back to them, or this is how I'm going to beat them at the line, or make them work, or, all that other stuff. So
cool.
But yeah, so I'm looking forward to, we're going to talk to Sharon next week.
Awesome.
So she's a fantastic lady. She has a coaching business here, and we're gonna hear all about it. And then she's qualified for Boston. She's done some other stuff too. She's done Mount Hood to the coast. Ultra running, so she's one of those crazy ultra running people. Geez. We started talking about my dream of doing rim to rim to rim, and she's been looking at it too.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it's great. So I think she'll be really great to hear from and talk to. So
awesome.
Really looking forward to next week. And then anything else, like definitely if you hear this and you're picking up what I'm putting down, I am a coach. I'm a USAT level 1 certified coach. I'm also going through to being a swim instructor. So I've taught Danny how to swim. Danny is basically 150 per 100 yard swimmer now.
No swimming at all to at least I can hold an okay time.
Yeah. So he went from no swimming to actually he's being really, really good in the pool. So if you want to get in touch with me, it's you can email this podcast at SufferSooner@gmail.com, and we can talk further. If not, it's okay. AI training can get you 90% of the way there for sure.
That's right.
Definitely, I would suggest Trainer Road or Garmin or something like that would work. If you're just noodling around on Zwift, I would not suggest something like that. Or there's other, if you're following a training program, I know there's some people that follow just training plans. Those can help you, but you could probably make more gains, especially if you've seen kind of like stagnation in your training or you're not getting better. So,
Awesome,
man. Well, Suffer complete. You got anything?
Nope, we're good.
All right. Good job.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please, if you like what we are doing here, leave a like, rate us, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. It really helps us grow and finds us more SufferSooner squad mates. And remember, when the finish line feels impossibly far away, we don't give up, we push harder, we dig deeper, and we find solace in the knowledge that our suffering is temporary and our resilience is forever.